The July 15th Board of Trustees meeting will come to order at 3:33. The following members are present: Anne Marie Randall Trejo, Brian O'Neill, Catherine Smith, and myself, Anna Piercy. Staff has requested the following amendments to the agenda. Wait a minute, is that right for the workshop?
They do that for
agenda.
Yeah.
For the, okay. Okay. Replace page 5 of the agenda to add updated language for item 11.3. Replace Exhibit C to include the updated requirements of AB 130. And it's signed by the governor on July 9th of 2021. Page 28 of the agenda. Poll item 12.35.
Which item was that?
Okay, it is on page, it's on
Oh, wait,
12.35,
Page 28.
page 28. So we didn't have the exhibits there.
Pull
Pull the whole thing, 12.35. And then Exhibit AAA, replace page 2 to correct Courtney White's step placement from 3 to 1. Okay. Do I have a motion to adopt the amended agenda?
So moved.
And a second. All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay. Now we will move to the study session. Dr. Nian?
Perfect. Thank you so much, President Piercy, members of the board, Superintendent Mazzuda, and guests. This afternoon, we'll be presenting the Section 115 Trust Solutions for our district. And I do have here Gail Beal from Keenan, which will also be co-presenting, as well as Carrie Allison from Morgan Stanley as well. So Section 115 of the IRS rules allows public agencies to invest public funds to assist with the following two liabilities. So the first one is the other post-employment benefits, which we also call it OPEB. The second one is the employer pension contributions, and that's regarding the increases in STRS and PERS. So currently, we have our money deposited with the county treasury. And as you know, so those are the investment options that we do, and the money sitting in there. As you know, as we presented to the board with our adopted budget, the current estimate for the interest is about 0.9%. And so, and Kerry can talk a little bit about that. Some of them, he was saying that the interest rates are looking to be going down even further. Obviously, as you know, in terms of the mortgage rates, things are going down. So we're looking at even some of them going down to what, 0.2%, Kerry?
Yeah, these are pools of money. I used to work for the state treasurer's office with LAIF, so I'm kind of a geek with this stuff, sorry. But so LAIF is a big pool that has a duration or sort of average maturity of about 6 months. The county is typically, 1.5 to 2.5 years. So as those longer, the higher paying coupon bonds mature, they're being replaced by bonds that are, fortunately earning like next to nothing right now, super low rates right now. So Nancy told me that the county's paying about 90 basis points, and LAIF, I believe, is in the upper 20s or low 30 basis points, but it's going down as the older bonds are maturing and being replaced by the newer bonds.
So it's possible that, what we're looking at is only going to be even lower down the road. And so then, so that's compare that, and that's why we're looking at the Section 115 to look at two possible options for investment. And so the two products we're looking at right now, the first one is the OPEB Solutions. That's obviously for the retiree medical portions of it. And the second one is the Pension Solutions. So that's called the Pension Stabilization Trust. And the way that how it's done, and so legally that you have to do it this way. So you have the Keenan team, which is they provide the overall program coordinator, administrator, that's what Gail's here. And you have a trustee that's contracted through Benefit Trust, and the person is actually Scott from Kansas. So that's the secondary piece of it. And then the last piece is Carrie from Morgan Stanley, which they are the registered investment advisor. So you do need to have these pieces as part of the trust plans when we were to invest these type of vehicles. And now Gail will be talking about the two different products here. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We appreciate the opportunity to be here this afternoon. So basically looking at the two different pieces, we're going to look at your OPEB liability and then your pension liability. So your OPEB liability right now, as of 2020, June 30th, 2020, is a little over $114 million. So when you look at that, how does that really affect you in terms of going out for bonds or your credit rating? So your current pay-as-you-go is almost $2 million, and the discount rate is 4%. So there are really two ways to reduce that large number, that liability. The first one is increasing that discount rate. And the way you do that is investing money, number one, or two, if you put it into a Section 115 trust where the rate of return is higher, your actuary is going to give you credit for that. So your liability will go down. So there are two ways to measure that. So looking at the product itself, Futuris is a Section 115 trust. It is in compliance with GASB 74 and 75, and it helps public agencies, school districts, cities, counties, community colleges manage their OPEB obligation. So again, your actuarial study is very important. That's something that most actuaries will work in conjunction with your business office to come up with, based on accounting, what that discount rate should be. And then looking at cost reduction strategies certainly is an important piece of it as well. When you establish an irrevocable trust, your actuary will actually give you credit for that amount of money that goes into an irrevocable trust, whereas the money at the county does not count. They won't give you credit, monetary credit for that. So setting up an irrevocable trust is very important. With Futuris, you have a discretionary feature through trust services, which really takes a lot of the liability off you as a board, and the district in particular, in terms of choosing investments and investment return. So in this particular case, the discretionary trustee chooses the actual investments within the portfolios with the assistance of Carrie, and he can talk a little bit more about that. And it's a customized solution so that you as a district have your own trust. The money's not commingled with any other. And again, as I mentioned, it really does help your bond rating, and in the case of community colleges, accreditation. And many times there's a joint labor and management program involved where obviously unions are very involved, and they understand the program. We want to make sure that all the constituencies understand. So once you know what that actuarial evaluation is going to be, and that's typically done every couple years, you establish the irrevocable trust. So that means the money can only be used to pay retiree medical benefits. The great advantage is, however, and we have several clients who have contributed and earned enough money where they're actually reimbursing themselves for past contributions. So it's not just strictly current contributions, you can use that money for past contributions as well. Once you develop a funding strategy, certainly identify what is available in terms of funding, and then develop that investment strategy, which is done primarily through meetings we would have with representatives from the district. And obviously the discretionary advisory services, which we talked about, and then making sure that you're in compliance with GASB 74 and 75. So in this particular case, this is a single employer trust. Very important. Investments and administrative economies of scale are available to you. So when you look at this, you want to make sure you're controlling your own trust. There's no risk sharing. In the very first meeting of the Board of Authority, Carrie takes that board through a pretty extensive compliance risk tolerance questionnaire. I kind of refer to it as a bad psych test, because it asks the same question in many different ways. And what that's doing is really trying to understand how each member of that board feels about investing, not just their funds, obviously, but public funds. The other thing we provide you, and Keenan does this, is the comprehensive compliance plan. That includes the substantive plan. So that's all your historical data, not only with the trust, but with your retiree medical. So 30 years from now, someone could walk in and say, oh, this is how we got where we are today. So very important. The Futuris Board of Authority, typically this is a group that will represent the district. It's your own board. You as a board of trustees would designate the members of the board by title. They certainly have an oversight of the program, even though the district would decide primarily on the amount of contributions and when. And then typically this group is 3 to 5 members. It can be more. We have retirement boards where a member of the Board of Trustees is on the board. Sometimes labor is represented, but that's something that you as a board can decide. As far as fees, because this is a little bit different in terms of the services you get, and it's a single employer trust, the total basis points at $10 million invested is almost 50 basis points. So I think what's important to remember here is not just what the fees are, but what your net rate of return is. And that's always important and something that we report out with every meeting of that retirement board. And typically they meet quarterly to start out with. It can go less frequently as individuals understand how the plan works and start to feel comfortable. The pension program is called the Pension Stabilization Trust. And I'm sure you all know that pension costs are going up for the employer dramatically. So if you're looking at $25.99 million spend with STRS, almost 12.5 with PERS in 2021, you can see that bottom box, which I think is very telling. You can see how much per year those contributions are going to go up, generally speaking. So in 2022, you're looking at a total of almost $5.5 million increase. So how can we help with that? How do you offset that? So the trust is really a way to pre-fund those pension costs. It reduces your liability for GASB 68. And it's important too that you can kind of manage that long-term pension liability and how it occurs. Again, you leverage the discretionary advisory feature of the discretionary trustee as well as carry. And it's designed specifically for California public agencies. It's designed, again, to offset those increases. It's designed to allow you to earn a better interest rate than you would otherwise, and certainly the money is liquid. So in this particular case, the district, again, would invest in an irrevocable trust. Typically, this is something that you could use your reserves on or one-time funding. Secondly, once you're funding, you're again going to identify that risk tolerance or investment risk. And again, you're allowing the discretionary trustee to manage those individual investments and taking that liability off you as a district. Money can be withdrawn at any time to pay for these liabilities. Can actually, you can do that without any fees. So there's not any type of withdrawal fee for either of these programs. Whoops, did I do something? There we go. So this is a little bit different than the OPEB trust. This is a multiple employer trust. However, there's no risk sharing. You as a district would still have your own account within the multiple employer trust. There would be 6 choices of portfolio options. And instead of having your own board here, there is already established a pension stabilization trust board of authority where it's made up of all member agencies in the program. And typically there's 1 member per agency. You don't have to have any one representative representing, but every district or agency that we have certainly has elected to do that. And then you elect an alternate as well. And so a little bit different. Again, this is multiple employer trust versus the single employer trust. Because it is a multiple employer trust, don't meet as often, meet only annually. And there are not all the services that go along with it, such as your substantive plan, comprehensive compliance plan. So in this case, the total cost is 30 basis points. So a little bit less expensive than the single employer trust. But again, because of the differences in what you're trying to accomplish, single employer trust is better for OPEB, multiple employer trust is better for the PST. I'm going to turn it over to Carrie to continue.
Thank you, Gail. And thank you all for giving me an opportunity to wear a tie for the first time in about 18 months. Wasn't sure if I could actually tie it, but it turned out to be second nature, I guess. So I work in the governmental and institutional side of Morgan Stanley. We're the registered investment advisor to the trustee, which is Benefit Trust Company out of Kansas. So we make recommendations to their trust committee. Only after their trust committee approves them do they enter the portfolios. So the portfolios have effectively been vetted by both Morgan Stanley and Benefit Trust Company, which goes to the fiduciary liability minimization that Gail was speaking about. The portfolios that are available are these 6 right here. The top are all bonds or fixed income, progressively more stocks as you move throughout, to the most aggressive one, which is about 3/4 in stocks, 1/4 in bonds. If you're in one of them, let's say, for instance, you're in the moderate growth portfolio that has 45% in stocks and 55% in bonds, and you log onto your account one day, you're not going to notice suddenly that it has 60% in stocks or 30%. It's going to stay right around that 45, and it may vary a few percentage points here and there depending on market moves. But these are meant to give you these are our target asset allocations for these portfolios. Turning to the next page, this is not meant for you to look at every single line or number, but these are the components of the portfolio. What Morgan Stanley does, what Benefit Trust asks of us, are basically 2 things. Come up with the mixes of the portfolios, the percentage of stocks versus bonds. And then secondly, answer the question, who are some of the best money managers in the world? We don't use Morgan Stanley products. We don't use Benefit Trust products. We just say, who are some of the best managers in the world? And we do the due diligence on that side of doing that analysis. A lot of numbers over there, but for example, on the fixed income side down below, we work with some of your neighbors around here. Western Asset Management is in Pasadena, a great bond shop. Guggenheim's in Santa Monica. BlackRock, PGIM out of Newark. So those are some of the companies that we use, third-party companies, and Morgan Stanley does all the due diligence and all of those. Occasionally we make changes to this list depending on market conditions and other factors. The next page, this is as of June 30th. These are the returns for the composite portfolios over the last quarter, year, 3 years, 5 years, and 10 years. And if you maybe just take some time to ponder those. Obviously, the more stocks you have, the higher your rate of returns longer term. Wasn't always the case. If you would have started in 08 or 07, that wouldn't have necessarily been the case. But over longer periods of time, that tends to be the trend there. If you look to the next page, though, which I think is a page we like to spend a fair amount of time, sorry about that. We like to spend a fair amount of time on. We've got the portfolio track records back to, and let me back up, the combination of Morgan Stanley and Keenan and Benefit Trust have been working together in these programs for, 13, 15 years, somewhere around there, basically back to the inception. What we've done is we've tracked all of the portfolios back to the beginning of 08. And we've looked at, of all these different portfolios, what was the worst 1 year period the portfolio ever had, as an example? Or what's the best 1 year period they ever had? And what's the average 1 year return? So for example, on the moderate growth portfolio, The worst one-year period back to the beginning of '08 was minus 21.83%. The best was 36.6, but on average, they've done 7.21% per year over all the different one-year periods. But then you say, okay, well, what about a 3-year period or a 5-year period? And this is where I think it's interesting, because the risk of owning stocks kind of goes down a little bit over time. Risk of owning bonds tends to go up a little bit. So if you look down at, for example, the moderate growth and the 5-year rolling period, the worst 5-year return was 301, the best was 1663, and on average is 769. Obviously, conditions going forward are going to be a little different because we're in a very low interest rate environment. But this statistical section helps our clients to get a sense of risk, of variability. If you hold it for a year or 2 or 3 or 5, what types of ranges of returns have happened in the past? Again, no guarantee for the future, but you get a sense of volatility in portfolios. Let's see. Next part, Nancy.
And so when we look at all those different factors, so a lot of the districts in our surrounding area, they are starting to do some of these type of investments. So obviously, Orange Unified was one of the ones that really did it really early on. And then also right here, next to us is the NOC ROP. They just also started doing these kind of products recently. And so, so how we kind of determine how much money do we think, we want to at least start considering to look at, right? And so in terms of OPEB, so how the way that we came up with the number was, we need about $2 million a year to pay for our retiree benefits. And so based on a return of about 6.5% return, that was the number that we said, okay, I think given where the current condition of the market, right? So about 6.5% return. Well, how much would it need to kind of get us to the $2 million? And the number was about $30 million. And so for the OPEB, that would be kind of, if we were to kind of get the $2 million a year, so for the return. So basically, once we have the money there, you will basically pay for all the retiree benefits moving forward. So that would be something, at least to kind of a starting point to think about. With regarding to pension, the increase is actually quite more significant. It's $5 million a year, right? So then even with the same kind of rate of return of 6.5%, it would take about $80 million to return the $5 million return for the pension. And obviously $80 million is a lot of money, and so it's like, well, so what would be a number to start at least thinking about what we could possibly do possibly. And so so I think if we just look at, let's say we just look at, we'd like to maybe at least have the $2 million return a year. That's, I think something that could be considered would be, let's say we would have put the one option is to have a $15 million in the OPEB solutions, and another 50%, so it's about $15 million into the pension. And so with that return of 6.5%, we could possibly looking at about $2 million return for the entire program. So that's if we were to do it that way. And so this is a sample, just to, we're not saying to do this right away, but if we were to look at, you can make a different deposits. You can deposit, let's say, 1 month and then the following time, and you can do like a 4-time deposit. What a lot of districts do is, okay, once we know what the dollar value, you can say, I'm gonna start doing it this year, and then next year I will put some deposits. So there's different ways, but this is just a sample of what it could look like. Option number 2 is to kind of maximize the pension investment, since pension investment, the cost is a lot lower. It's the 0.3%, the 30 basis point versus the 0.49 with the other one. So we would just say do an investment of $10 million into the OPEB, and then the rest of $20 million in the pension. So the net return is the same. It's just the fee structure is a little bit different. But one of the things that we thought about is our district is very collaborative with different players, and we thought, so So the idea is with the OPEB, then there is there's a trust within, so there's a group. And that may be helpful for kind of having that conversations, but put a little bit less money into that pool at 10 million versus the 15. And so this would be the kind of different type of investment, so that the kind of shift would be a little different. So, but the contribution schedule is once that we determine how much we would like to put it in there, and then we can determine what the schedule could look like, obviously working with Carrie and with the team. And so, okay, what happened to the... So that's the presentation, and we are here to answer any questions that you may have. I'm sure this is something, very different, and so we're here to answer any questions you may have.
I have questions.
Oh, perfect, okay.
Anne Marie?
No, the light bulb just came on for me. I didn't understand at the beginning that we're trying to offset off the cost of both our medical benefits and our pension.
There's two options we can possibly do, yes.
Okay, so we're trying to be really aggressive in stabilizing.
You could do one, yes, so I think at NOC, RLP, are they doing just the pension, correct? Because, yeah, so they don't have as many staff as well, so their liability for the OPEB is not as big as ours. Ours is pretty significant.
What does OPEB stand for?
Other post-employment benefits, so that's the retiree benefits, medical benefits.
Okay, that was what was throwing me off, because I understand the pension stabilization.
Yes, that's the one that you have on the NOCROP, yes.
Because I was trying to figure out why would you have to give employees a questionnaire. So that's what was throwing me off. So I understand, and I don't have any questions now. Thank you.
Is there a maximum that a school district or entity, municipality can withhold from utilizing on a daily basis and invest? Could we put $500 million into this? Or are we guided where we can only invest so much? Because it's not our money, it's the public's money.
Yes, definitely. So it's a great question. So I think you look at how much your liability is and then kind of, to see, and that's why we kind of came up with those numbers. So our total liability is $114 million now. Some districts, for example, they have fully vested. They basically have deposited maybe Carrie can talk about that too, but some of them, they do have put quite a bit of money in there already. But I would say you look at your cash flow, how much cash flow we have, and then that would determine that we wouldn't be able to put $500 million in our district because we don't have that kind of cash flow.
And that was another question, is how is our taking money, our cash, and investing it affect our district's daily cash flow, not knowing what's going to happen tomorrow in this environment?
It's a great question. So one of the things I really love about this product is if you were to do the pension, since we have so much liability, our liability each year is, going to be $40+ million a year. So I wouldn't recommend us to have more than that, because the idea is if you need the cash back, we can submit the invoice right away, and the cash is within a couple of days, I believe. So we have enough of a liability to submit for the invoices. And with this product, you can always go back. You don't only do for current year. We can even go back 3 years. So for example, if we do very well, let's say on the OPEB side, instead of, some of the returns this last year that we have seen, some of them were over 30%. So some districts are like, wow, I can actually submit 3 years of invoices now to have that. So you can actually go back. There's no timeline. You can even go back, let's say, to 1980 if you have the data. So that was one of the things that, to me, is very important to be very liquid with these products because of the cash flow from the state. And so once we, this will be anything that above what we need for our operations. If it's something that we needed, we shouldn't do it. But obviously, we monitor our cash flow, then we would know, oh, you know what, if I need this. And some people, you can take a look at this as a kind of investment vehicle. If I need the cash, I can submit the invoice for it, and then once the state replenish our cash, then we can go back and go ahead and submit back. So there's different ways we can do that.
And there's no cost for doing that?
No, you can submit any time. I mean, you have to pay for the fees that's stated, but there's no cost in terms of getting the money back.
Okay, these target rates of 6.5%, is that before or after our basis is taken out?
So Carrie, that's,
If we're to be in charge of 3 basis points for 20 million, that's $600,000 a year. So is that 600,000 after or before the investment return?
Oh, I was gonna go to the rate of return slide. Or just put us somewhere in the presentation. Perfect, I can take it from there. Thank you. These are the rates of return for the portfolios for the last,
I ask you, what page are you on?
oh, yes, that is page
It's about
20.
4 pages from the back, Kathy.
21.
Oh, is there a page number on it? Oh, so it is, yeah, 21.
And we've actually got some returns back to about 13 and a half years, which gives you a little bit more data. And the reason for the 6.5% number in the presentation, obviously you can make that number kind of whatever you want to make it in theory, but there, I think Nancy was trying to give you a sense of how the math works effectively. She was really targeting the moderate growth portfolio,
Okay.
which was 45, roughly our 50-50 portfolio, 45-55. And the 10-year return on that portfolio is 7.15.
Okay,
Now, that's before, so the PST money, the pension, you'd have to deduct 30 basis points for that.
right.
And then the OPEB, you'd have to deduct the 49.7 from that.
Okay.
And I do want to make one clarification. The reason we can invest, and I know you probably all know this, but just to make sure this is covered, the reason we can invest and earn more money than the county or LAIF is because technically these are retirement systems. In a retirement system, you can invest, well, when it's idle cash, like LAIF and the county treasury, you've got the California Government Code 53601 restrictions, what you can invest in. 5-year maximum government bonds, 30% A-rated corporate bonds. Well, those yields are super low right now, but they have to invest in that. In a retirement system, those rules go away. Instead, they're replaced by a prudent man rule, where you want to make sure you're investing appropriately for your time frame, but there are no restrictions on maturity or credit ratings like that. That's why your bond managers are allowed to do more things. You can get higher returns like that.
Going back to, I guess it'd be page, with my glasses, it's page 10 and talking about the Board of Authority, and you said there'd be an oversight board that is not us, it is a 5 or 7 member that we choose, and what kind of responsibility or what kind of ability do they have to do? What are they there for?
Yeah, great question. So basically, this Board of Authority is put into place as an oversight board of the trust. So what that would entail is, let's just say quarterly meetings. Carrie, Scott, Keenan come in, and there's performance reports that are given to the group to discuss. This group typically will decide on bylaws of the Board of Authority. Those meetings are Brown Act meetings, so they're open, obviously, to the public. But it's generally an oversight board, and it's really important, we feel, because we want to make sure that you're being represented and that there's a clear understanding. Also, typically, the chair of that board, along with our team, will come in at least annually and present to you as a board an annual report, so you can see and understand what has happened during the past year. And we want to make sure that there's an abundance of transparency, not only within that group, but within the district and your board here.
So the oversight board is not a decision-making board. They're simply receiving information from you, your group, and presenting it or giving us as a board what is going on and making sure that what is going on is as being reported to us?
So there are some decisions they would make, such as once that risk tolerance questionnaire is gone through and Carrie guides the group through that, it's determining a portfolio, if you will, for the investment. So let's just assume it's moderate growth. And then with that, there's an investment policy statement that they would vote upon to put into place. So they would make those decisions. However, as far as the amount of money that goes into either trust, that is a district decision.
I'd like to ask you, who and how comprises that oversight board?
Good question. So that is something that you as a board would discuss and approve. That's done by board resolution. Typically, it's by position. So as an example, we have districts where it's all district staff, might be the superintendent, CBO, HR, or risk management person. We have districts where actually there's a member of the Board of Trustees that is on that board. And then we have some where there are bargaining unit individuals on that as well. That is your decision, and we do it by position in the event that perhaps someone leaves and goes to another district, doesn't have to come back to the board because it was a name, retires, yeah. We don't put specific names, it's just identified by title.
I find it very distressing that the information that we're inputting and that you're giving is very difficult for me to take in with these masks on. It makes it beyond difficult, and I feel such a responsibility to be able to understand and take this, and I just don't understand why we can't make some adjustment. If you stand apart, why can they not speak from the dais with separation? I just find the timing of having to wear this and take this information is very, very upsetting. My question also was liquid, pardon?
I'm all fogged up too, so my glasses, so I'd have to agree a little bit.
It's unacceptable.
Just please make sure you speak into the microphone and slowly. Thank you.
I clearly do not get your words clearly.
Okay.
And it's just the worst. My other concern is the same as Mr. O'Brien, or O'Neill. I've done that forever. Everybody's used to it.
Yeah.
About liquidity. And who determines that?
The liquidity? So that would be determined by your district staff. So let's say that your costs for the pension trust, or your pension costs for that year are, let's just say, $2 million. What then staff would do would be to send in a request for reimbursement, and that goes into benefit trust company, and then they wire the funds directly to the district, and there's no cost to do that.
Would the oversight board be bonded?
We have some board members who have taken out a liability policy, which is really inexpensive to do, and we can certainly help them with that if that's something they would like to do. Carrie had something, I believe.
Yeah, regarding the withdrawals for the trust, it's really simple. Scott Rankin, who's the trust attorney for Benefit Trust, if he were here, what he would effectively say is, they're not, that these trusts you can withdraw money to reimburse yourself for expenses, current year expenses or past expenses, whether they be pension expenses from the PST or retiree healthcare expenses from the OPEB trust. Benefit Trust is not going to audit that you've really made those payments. You're just going to fill out a form that says, hey, I want to withdraw $5 million to reimburse ourselves for, as an example, for either pension or OPEB expenses that we've already paid for in the prior year. So because you can go back multiple years, there's a tremendous amount of liquidity in these. Say you put 20 million in the pension stabilization trust. Nancy, I think you said your yearly pension costs are like 40 million. So effectively, you could pull all the money out if you wanted to, because you're reimbursing yourself for expenses. The reason I think one of the major reasons, and I think effectively the main reason for these trusts, is to be able to earn more interest than at the county treasury or LAIF. Because if you could get 4 or 5, 6, 7% return over time, then they'll start to become interesting numbers that help with all the budgetary issues that Nancy was speaking about.
And I think, so that was primarily my question is, the timing of us being able to withdraw. And I believe you had mentioned that it's 24 hours to 48 hours turnaround.
Yes, it's very, very quick. And for example, we wouldn't do anything, obviously, I did this, investment for my prior district, and actually every month I, update the board so that, I'll update the board where we're at, how much it is, what was our initial investment, what is our return. And so because they give us a data, I can actually look at it almost on a daily basis, where everything is at. And obviously we will kind of, before we do anything, we'll be coming to the board and say, okay, well, this is how much investment return, and then looking at our overall budget, how much do we actually need for that year? Or we can say, we don't need the cash, we just leave it there to let it kind of invest longer, and then when we actually need it, then we can withdraw. So we don't need to immediately withdraw unless we need it. And so the idea is, the board will be updated monthly, or any given time, but the idea is, we would all be making sure monitoring these type of investment. To me, it's very important that we know where everything is at, right, in any given day. And market has done extremely well for a lot of districts, but it's obviously we're looking at it long term. And so I think it's a good investment. There's two options, right? So really is the pension one is a little bit cheaper. There's no board authority, and that's the one that NOCRP has done because it's a little bit cheaper. There's less things involved a little bit, and so that would be something that's cheaper, and we have a lot of liability, so that's one option.
I was going to ask that question regarding what ROP did versus what we are proposing here. So the ROP was the pension stabilization program, and there was no trust involved.
It's also a trust.
But it's a trust, but maybe because of the size of the district that they don't have their own trust. Is that?
Pension one does not have like a board. Yes, so no. So that one it's still considered a trust, but there's no board. Only the OPEB has the board. And most districts, if because our district is big enough, we could look into that. But one option, for example, in my last district, we did the same thing. We just did the pension because the fees was lower, and we're part of this group, and that's what we did. And so. We could even start with one thing. You don't have to do both. We can just even do one.
Now, is there a reason, or I guess I'll ask the question is, I know with the makeup of the board, does it prohibit us from appointing a member of the public? Or is it necessary? Or why was not a member of public considered and only district employees?
To date, we don't have anyone that's a member of the public. It's someone that typically the boards were set up to represent, if you will, the district. So you would want someone that maybe had hands-on type of responsibility. And as far as just adding to what Nancy said about the trusts, the only difference between a multiple and a single employer trust is structure. So single employer trust, this is your trust at Anaheim Union High. Multiple employer trust is made up of several different agencies, school districts. So still a trust, still a Section 115 trust. It's just that it's multiple employers rather than single employer.
And then moving back to the rate of return, what do we earn right now? Yeah,
On the county.
Yeah.
0.9% is what we projected.
That I just confirmed by what Brian was saying, and and our projected is about 6.5%, right?
Well, yeah, based on, and that's on the, yeah, so with the moderate growth.
What will be the most conservative that we could get?
So the most conservative one is,
At 2 point something, right?
yeah, 3 point, which still beat the county treasury, so.
We'll still beat it.
Yes, it
Right.
will still beat it, and so, but most districts, for example, yeah, okay, I'm gonna talk about that. Yeah, it's on. So, yeah, so the fixed income, for example, the 10-year return is about 4.3%. And so a lot of districts are, the ones I know of, they're doing either moderate or moderate growth. And a lot of districts are now moving to the moderate growth of the 7.15% return. And obviously, last year was a really good year, so a lot of districts earn much more than the 7%, obviously. So some of them was up to about 30%, so the last quarter. So the idea is just really kind of the difference, right?
Yeah, I know, it's not like something, but what I'm trying to make, the point is that we'll be earning more than what we have right now in terms of, where we're setting our money with the county. And I think that's the key. I know initially I had a lot of questions when ROP was doing it. By doing some research with, obviously from your district, previous district, and there are a couple other districts which are doing it, I know that it's been good for those districts in terms of maintaining the costs, right? Sometimes we may not exceed it, but at least it's actually getting us closer to the goalpost of making sure that we're not burdened with all that cost. So I'm supportive of it, but obviously we have other board members, so I'll leave it at that.
And if I could add some numbers to your comment, if you look on page 22, this was the statistical section. For example, look at the moderate growth column. Look down below, and again, this looks at the performance of the portfolio back to the beginning of '08. Okay, so it includes some pretty tough years and some good years. Well, looking at the moderate growth in the rolling 5-year periods, meaning lots of different 5-year periods, the worst 5-year period was up 3.01% per year. The best was up 16.6, and on average it's 7.69.
Right.
Obviously, bond yields are lower now, so projected returns on bonds are probably lower. But should we beat the county treasury over time? We better. That's kind of what we're supposed to do, but yes.
Any other comments, questions? Okay.
Just one thing, when ROP first started, we put in a very conservative amount, and then we got great returns, and we put more in this year.
Right, okay. Well, now, this is a presentation, so we're not really doing any action, but it is information. And my only comment, it's sort of like the difference between a bank and a credit union as far as interest. You take the one that gives the better interest. Okay, now, is there?
Well, thank you for
Any-
coming
okay.
here, and we appreciate you
Yeah.
giving us some more information.
Yep, that's very good. You guys
So
wanna say
if we
anything?
can get an investment that equals .9 plus our basis points that we're paying, we're at least even Steven. Anything above that, we're
Gravy.
gravy. Or with mashed potatoes and gravy, yeah.
Okay. Okay, thank you both very much.
Thank
It was
you.
nice meeting you.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, now, so we will,
Public comments for closed session.
okay. Okay, let me go to that here. So that was our study session, and now we will go to public comments, closed session items. This is the opportunity for community members to address the Board of Trustees on a closed session item only. Do we have any requests to speak? Okay, having none, we will then move to closed session at 4:25.